All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode of the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brad Thomas, and I hope you're all buckled in because, hang on, we're going in. We got a great Wednesday show lined up for you guys. This is the last live show before the holiday break. I'll probably do some impromptu streaming here and there as I'm doing the holiday thing. But so if you haven't already subscribed and rung the bells and hit all notifications, that's about the only way I'm going to let you know. No ghost radar tonight, Rachel, because we've got some great guests that are going to be dealing with all kinds of ghostly stuff, and they are experts or at least very very adept and involved in the realm of instrumental transcommunication. They have been at this for years and are pioneering a brand new approach, which you may have seen when we had them on the podcast episode. I don't know if you guys caught that or not, but buckle up because I'm joined by Tony and Cherie Rathman, who are here to talk about their involvement and work in a project called the STATICOM Project, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm here to tell you that I haven't been this excited about instrumental transcommunication in a while, and that's an exciting field anyway. But it's really exciting because they are really pushing the boundaries and implementing some brand new approaches and ideas and techniques that are really yielding incredible results. I've heard several samples of their work, and it really is mind-boggling what they're getting. And it's been exciting to watch their project flourish and develop. And they're joining us tonight with actually some brand new stuff as well. So without further ado, let's get to it. I'm going to welcome Tony and Cherie Rathman to the show. Hey guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brent. It's a pleasure to be here again. And we love discussing Staticom, so this will be great.
Hi, Brent. Thank you for having us.
Hi guys, thank you so much for coming on. Again, you and I, we had a great discussion on the podcast along with Ron and Lourdes, and you guys really, blew me away, not only with the depth of what you're doing, but with the results you're getting. Again, for those that may not be familiar with it, can you give us kind of a 30,000 foot view of what is STATICOM Project?
Sure. Back in 2019, our counterparts basically brought back a version of spirit communication that pre-existed before the spirit box, the Frank's box, was ever developed. And it was a European method called direct radio voice, which basically used a radio but didn't scan like spirit boxes scan today. It sat on a vacant frequency. Well, from doing research and looking at what the ITC pioneers had done, people like Frederick Jurgensen, Marcello Bacci used DRV, direct radio voice, for like 30, 40 years. They said, let's see if we can get the same results that these people got. And so they did that. And then Cherie and I saw what they were doing. We joined forces with them at that time. And we developed DRV, or direct radio voice, into Staticom. Well, what's the difference? Direct radio voice still used a radio. Okay. Staticom uses a white noise generator. One of the biggest negative outlooks on instrumental transcommunication was that if you're using a device that is made to pick up vocals and communication, how do you determine what's spirit and what's radio waves?
Right.
And so it was never really taken seriously. But our team was able to figure out that we didn't need it, that the RF signal was actually an impedance in the communication, which is why if you're using a spirit box that scans up and down a dial, it actually impedes the communication that you get. Because when it hits a radio station, your white noise is gone and the station's coming through, and the communication from spirit gets lost.
Sure.
The other thing about a spirit box was that they claimed, the theory was that they would take fragments of audio and rearrange them into their own sentences. Well, if they can do that at the speed of light with all the right fragments available at that split second when they're doing it without latency, that's a pretty incredible feat.
Oh, yeah.
So what our team decided and through research discovered was that the RF signal from radio was not needed at all, and that we could get voices from pure, plain, broadband white noise, and not a word or two,
Yeah.
but full sentences.
Yeah, that's what really blew me away. And that's when you first, I think it was you that reached out to me initially, and you sent me some samples. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. It wasn't just hat or, chair or, happy. It was these sentences, these phrases were coming through. And I was like, wow, this is really groundbreaking, because, I'm just extraordinarily excited by the concept or the possibility of having a dialogue with whatever these intelligences are. And I don't pretend to know, and maybe nobody can know, but what could they tell us? What could they share with us? And what do they see from their perspective? What is their worldview? I mean, all of that stuff is fascinating.
Yeah, and the research into what can be learned, as well as what kind of questions you can ask and get answers to where the answers stop, has been one of the research things that we've been continuing to dive into, because we noticed that at a point we hit a wall. Yes. And they just won't answer, or they'll tell each other, don't answer, stop talking. So it's really interesting the way that works.
And what nice things about with Staticom as well, it's kind of like a two-way communication. You ask a question, they will answer. It's kind of like
it's the closest thing today anyway to Thomas Edison's phone to the dead. But she's absolutely right. The two-way communication is absolutely vital. You can ask a question, get an answer, and then you can respond back to that answer, and that dialogue can keep going. And the great thing about it is that not only do you get an answer, and you get it with timing and relevance to the question asked, but it also displays intelligence. I mean, there were times we've gotten an answer, we had to go look up words that they used to figure out exactly what the message was. And when that happens, you're dealing with A, intelligence, B, you can take away the whole idea that, because a white noise generator, which we use today, can't pick up radio signal or walkie-talkie or baby monitor or satellite waves, nothing.
Right.
And white noise has no vocal data. So when you can ask the question without broadcasting your voice, we speak in our normal tone as we're speaking now, and get an answer with timing, relevance, and intelligent to the question asked, that's mind-blowing.
It really is. It really is. I've long marveled, and I don't know exactly what the mechanics are or what changes, but this is the most exciting development I've seen in a long time, as I said before. But in covering so much of this material with spiritual encounters and stuff as I do on the shows, I most marvel with the stories of children, and they are having full-blown dialogues with these unseen presences and learning things from them. Sometimes it's little songs or stories or things they couldn't possibly have picked up, but they're, well, who told you that? Well, the man in my closet or something like that. It's like, what? But then somehow that ability is largely, in many cases, just disengaged. It's like something to do with maybe the age, maybe the mental wavelengths of a young child versus an adult, or any other number of things. But I just lament the fact that would be a passing phase. But this is really exciting to me, because it's like you guys are rekindling that possibility for, the rest of us,
Well, it was just as much of a surprise for the team, because, the idea was there that this worked, but to actually hear it for yourselves, and we run it couple times a week just in the house.
Okay.
And, they'll say things that they'll repeat words you said or statements or add on to it. Or like Cherie will walk into the studio room and they'll say, "Hi, Cherie." And it's just,
we will just run the Staticom. If you're alone, if he's alone over here and he doesn't have anybody to talk to, he will just, talk to Staticom.
Yeah. I mean, I literally can have a conversation. The other fascinating part when we first started doing this was that I don't even have to say anything. Yeah. You can turn it on and you can hear them speaking to each other.
Oh.
So it's like a spiritual wiretap where you just invaded their world.
Right.
And, so I'll listen to them talk and try to get a sense of what they're talking about. And then I'll make a comment out of nowhere. And when we first started, that would freak them out. And they'd be like, wait, what? I just heard, and who said that? What are you talking about? He can hear me. I'm like, yeah, I can hear you. So
what kind of dynamic does that imply then? Because with most of these ITC, it's basically receiving. Like, but something about your process is creating bidirectional communication. And do you, and I'm not really familiar with the mechanical side of this, so I'm kind of on the outside looking in, but do you input your voice into there via microphone?
No.
So I wonder, how are they surprised? Because oftentimes we think, well, spirits can maybe just, hear us in more of an energetic way because our thoughts carry or whatever. But, when what you're saying is that they're almost like, hey, where is that coming from? And as if they're receiving you as well as you're receiving them. It's like this Staticom's becoming this medium rather than just an antenna, so to speak.
You're absolutely correct. And these are great questions, Brent. And I'll try to answer this as efficiently as I can.
Sure.
But one of the things that we were forced to do when we started getting results was from Staticom. And it was mind-blowing, the effect that it had. But the first thing we had to do was to literally take a step back from the evidence that we were getting and take a look at what we believed reality to be, how we believed it functioned, what we thought the process was after death. Did it continue?
Sure.
What was the existence of the soul, the spirit, the consciousness, whatever you want to call it? And what we put together was that consciousness is literally the ontological primitive or the basic building block of all life.
Sure.
And the universal consciousness is what lives outside of human reality in the universe. And each and every one of us is part of that universal consciousness. We're all the same in that mechanism and manner. And when we have a human life, we become a subset or a divided portion of that universal consciousness with assets that allow us to make our own decisions and choices and become a separated piece of the universal consciousness. What we then believe happens, and this also proves how like people who have psychic abilities could get this information, but whether you're human, in human form, you still are a portion of that universal consciousness. And that thought process, even as I'm thinking right now, gets transmitted back to universal consciousness.
Right.
And when we pass away, our consciousness returns to universal consciousness, and that information is shared. So when I ask a question, and one of the clips I have is I asked, "How do you hear me?" And their answer was energy of the mind. That's the thing. Meaning they're not hearing my voice. It doesn't matter if I actually even say it. And we tested this by asking questions by just thinking it. and the answers would come through the STATICOM method.
I don't know if I don't know if this is a revelation or not. It is for me, because this is maybe creates some kind of sense in regard to how they're hearing you suddenly when you're listening to STATICOM. But I think it ties in with what you just said, though, because consciousness, of course, also requires an awareness of something to be conscious of. And perhaps by virtue of you hearing their conversation or their thoughts as they're sharing them to each other, and this is bizarre, so please forgive me. I'm just really fishing here, but spitballing an idea. But it almost creates, maybe by virtue of you hearing it, you're creating like a quantum entanglement there, and therefore that's where the consciousness links, and the awareness links as well, and perhaps there's something to that. Does that make sense, or am I just...
No, that does make sense, and is definitely a possibility. And what you were referring to about consciousness being aware of itself, that's obviously metaconsciousness. And humans have that. Does universal consciousness have metaconsciousness? Probably not, because if it's the ontological primitive, there'd be no subset of it to think about itself. But to answer your question about how we're hearing them, is that the STATICOM method uses a process called stochastic resonance. And what that does is that it will take broadband white noise, and through the physics process of stochastic resonance, will take an undetectable signal and make it detectable. So we're literally using white noise to make the sound audible to our human senses, to the point where we can hear it. Okay. Now, one of the big things that we determined from this, which came up in other podcast discussions, was that every psychic medium, every person on the planet said, well, spirits can't speak. They have no vocal cords. They just transmit their thoughts. Well, if that was true, then stochastic resonance would not be able to pick up an audible signal. And our process is showing that it can. So that means however light that signal is outside of human hearing, it's there and it exists.
Wow, that's fascinating. You know, I've often theorized that some of what we perceive as ghosts are probably something that other than what our traditional thinking would suggest. Like, generally when we hear the term ghost or spirit, we think, oh, person used to be alive but isn't anymore. But I think that we're probably swimming in a sphere of intelligences that maybe were never human, and maybe they're just out of phase of us in a vibrational frequency, or just out of our light spectrum, out of our audio spectrum and stuff. So maybe that's part of what you're bridging here, is some of that as well.
Correct. It's the STATICOM method is not that dissimilar from a radio. And you have radio waves going by you all the time, but you don't hear speech or music unless you have the device in front of you turned on. Then the device translates the signals into either speech or music. STATICOM does the same thing, but with consciousness and vocal phenomena.
Now, just to get a little bit of background, Tony, I know you were really well involved in ITC in terms of making spirit boxes and creating devices, and then you made this leaf. Can you go a little bit into your journey prior to all this? What was your involvement in the ITC community?
Sure. Well, 15 years ago, I had none, because I didn't believe any of this.
Okay.
My father was a physics, chemistry, and physical science instructor. So when I asked questions as a kid, it was things like, hey, Dad, why is the sky blue? And I'd get scientific answers. Well, there's water vapor in the air when the sunlight hits it. Blue's the most reflective color, so the sky appears blue. Not about ghosts, spirits, entities, any of this. But his scientific background 15 years ago, when Cherie was fascinated with paranormal shows, tricked me on a Valentine's Day to take her ghost hunting. And I was just shaking my head going, oh man, this is going to be.
He's very skeptic. So.
Well, I was. She tried to get me to watch the shows. I'd sit there for 2 minutes. I'm like, Cherie, this is BS. None of this is real. Well, I took her and she had fun, and that was all I cared about. But when we got home and she started reviewing audio, pictures, video, she was calling me over going, what is this? This wasn't in the picture. Whose voice is this? We were the only two people there. Who's answering this? I was blown away and couldn't.
Yeah. He got very interested because when I got a EVP, his name was mentioned.
Yeah.
Tony Rathman. And he's like, who the heck
said that? Where did that come from?
Exactly. So, and then he was so curious and, fascinated by it. And we keep on investigate that place over and over again. And that's how he started,
Yeah, that's how it began. I doubted it even when I heard it, but I couldn't explain where it was coming from.
Right.
And I tried to debunk it reasonably and rationally and couldn't. So I finally said to her, let's go back and try it again. Maybe there's a vent where voices were coming through. Maybe was some weird lighting that caused this figure-looking thing in the picture. We went back. I couldn't find anything that would have caused it. And in fact, when we came back, we had even more evidence. Wow. And I was just like, no way. And that's how it began. And then we investigated that single place over 50 times. And then we started branching out all over Arizona. And then from Arizona to California, Nevada, and then all across the country, and just kept doing it until we moved out of the country. Beeping. What?
Your pager is beeping.
I know it's not a pager. But then we just kept expanding. And the biggest fascination from hold on, I'm gonna stop this beeping. The biggest fascination was from everything that we captured was the audio. And so that got us into EVPs, and then that's got us into spirit boxes, which we built for 12 years, trying to improve. And then we made the leap from 12 years of building spirit boxes to Ron and Lourdes introducing us to DRV, and then we've never looked back or touched a spirit box since.
Wow, that's really cool. I think it's a marvelous thing, and again, what you're doing is so, to me, it's just groundbreaking and extraordinarily exciting. How would you compare this? Obviously, you went into a little bit about how, the spirit boxes do sweeping and stuff, and you're not even using the RF and stuff. What am I trying to ask? I guess just the mechanics of these different tools. Now I do paranormal investigating as well, and I use things like REM pods and some yes/no detector, and there's a name for it. It looks like a pyramid with a green and red light.
Yeah,
I can never remember the name, but I've had some really striking and surprising results with things like that. The flashlight test, of course, the K2 and other EM detecting methods. What are your thoughts on those, first of all, as someone who's pretty involved in this field?
Well, it depends on, exactly which device we're talking about. But let's take an EMF meter, for example, or a K2.
Uh-huh.
Could the results that you're getting be paranormal? They could. Is there evidence that shows that it's paranormal? No. Was the device created for paranormal? No. Are there signals in any environment that can set off a K2? Yes. Electricity, wires, Wi-Fi signals,
alternators,
walkie-talkies. I mean, the list just goes on and on.
Sure. Yeah.
So the concern is, what's the evidence behind a device? What was the device created for?
Mm-hmm.
And most devices out there were not created for paranormal. Then you've got things like the puck and the Ovilus. Well, again,
cat's ball.
Right. Well, not the cat's ball, but supposedly created for the paranormal. But where's the evidence that supports the way they work? If they say, well, there's sensors in it, and the spirits can send the right energy to pick the right words.
Yeah.
Okay. That happens how, and where's the proof behind that? That's how it operates. And even with a K2, where is the evidence that supports that a spirit even gives off electromagnetic frequency?
There is no research background how actually proven that it is really for
that method.
Right.
They're what's called spiritual axioms, meaning that information that's just been passed down and just accepted. Like if you put two mirrors together, it's going to create a portal. Mm-hmm. There's not a single person in the paranormal that doesn't heard that. And most go, yeah, it will. Where is the evidence for that?
Right.
Now, if I threw a quarter at one mirror and it came out the other one, okay, there's some evidence that supports that this might be possible. But there is none.
Right.
There is none that a portal was created by putting two mirrors together. So that's what we tried to avoid when we put the STATICOM method together. Mm-hmm. We tried to align what we were building with what we were hoping for with results, with a straight path of information that went from point A to point B without convoluting the path into, well, if this happens, well, that's because you went over here and then this occurred. We drew a straight line and said, well, okay, consciousness is the ontological primitive. It can communicate with itself, and that's how information is passed back and forth.
Yeah, I was thinking with I was going to ask about something about the other devices. When you were remarking about EM, EM, and I think a lot of this is people take offense when they're, this is all pseudoscience. The not necessarily STATICOM, but just the ghost investigating, paranormal investigating. It's a pseudoscience, and I don't disagree because of the very thing that you mentioned. We're taking a lot of methods that weren't developed for this and trying to apply them towards this other focus. And I personally have received plenty of really convincing feedback from these different devices, but exactly. I do agree they're very prone to false positives, and there's no way to really, like when you mentioned the Ovilus, one of the big personal hangups I have with that is like you take this device and you bring it to, let's say, a Victorian town or some place that's been wiped out since the 1800s, and you say, here's a device, use your energy, you can make words. Well, where's the learning curve on that? How do they just know? I mean, that the logic is a big separation for me personally. Now, I will say I've seen Ovilus spit out some really surprising things, and it does seem to be relevant. But again, I'm with you. I just think that there's a lot of, and then there's a lot of. I think we want to experience this stuff, and so we try to tailor what feedback we're getting towards the results we want. And maybe it's a confirmation bias of a sort, but I think, that it's very important to look into that. But the other thing I was going to mention is that belief, and you're right, that a lot of people think, well, ghosts are EM, they're electromagnetic. That's the energy of ghosts. And I don't buy that at all, because if they were ghosts, were made out of EM, we could screw them up just by hanging magnets around. I mean, it would just screw them up. But what I think might be happening, and I'm kind of going astray here, so forgive me, but I love having these discussions. But if EM isn't necessarily what they are, but whatever they are does affect the EM field in our space, and so it's like one step removed. Whatever they are is an energy we don't understand, but it seems to influence the EM field around us. Does that make any sense?
That makes perfect sense. You said a whole bunch of stuff I want to touch on.
Okay.
You said that even if the devices weren't meant for the paranormal, that the results that you can sometimes get from them defy logic.
Yeah.
I will agree with that.
Yep.
I mean, science never took spirit boxes seriously because their response was, you're using a radio, you're picking up stray radio waves.
Sure.
Now, is that a legitimate concern? Of course it is. Mm-hmm. But when I would turn one on and hear, "Hi, Tony," or "It's Mr. Rathman," no radio station's broadcasting that. And if they are, I want to be paid because that's my name.
Not famous.
No, I'm not. So, but that was a great point, because there is a consistency of answers and responses that shouldn't be there. And if you, the timing and relevance of it, exactly. So if you look at that overall picture of how many investigators have gotten things like that, that starts to put the picture together that, hey, something is happening here.
Right.
Whether science takes it legitimately or not, doesn't matter. Now, the other thing you said that I wanted to comment on was, you know, about people using different devices, doing it different ways. That's super important. That's how Staticom became Staticom from DRV. We tried stuff and it produced results, and that's the only way to do it. And then the other thing you said was something about, you know, children being more open. Absolutely they are. Why? Well, one, they're newer. Two, they're probably not as influenced by people saying, if, you know, little 6-year-old Johnny runs up and says, hey, I saw a ghost.
Yeah.
He might have.
Yeah.
But when mom and dad and grandma and grandpa go, no, you didn't, that doesn't exist, that changes perception and influences their ability to receive that information.
Sure. Yep. I think that's very true. Yeah. I do know that, and this is just another side thing that I'd heard that I was very excited by, because of that very question that I had about why do these kids have this ability to tune into this and we don't? And I've told this story many times on my show, so forgive me, audience. I'm sorry I'm being redundant, but I got to share this with Tony and Cherie. So I was watching, it was just a clip on YouTube, a short that, and it just popped up. I was just watching shorts one day, and the Joe Rogan clip came up, and he had a guy on there. I don't remember the guy's name, but the guy was talking about the very different brain that children have in terms of how their brain functions versus adult brains, because apparently kids are in this natural theta state from birth to about 5 to 7 years. And after that, their brain waves turn into a more of an adult state, which I don't remember what it's called, but I found that really interesting. And that theta state is better known as the state that hypnotists put you in order to, you know, suggest and to open you up to, you know, this possibility. But you look at kids and they are just wide open. They are just wide open.
And that theta state allows them to take in information on a level that once you get past age 7, 8, 9, it slows.
Yes.
And they can absorb information faster than anyone else, and an ability that we probably don't even understand yet today.
Right. But
or maybe adults, it has more, adults' mind is more polluted than the kids.
Well, that whole nature nurture thing does have an effect on that as well. But the theta process of the brainwaves at that stage allow them to pull in information very quickly.
Yeah, it's very exciting, and I know there's lots of developments. People are trying to create devices, and I mean, we go into theta state all the time. Like when you're driving home and you're like, God, I don't even remember driving. How did I get here? And that's a natural state of hypnosis. So I think we go into these states, and perhaps sometimes when people see apparitions and then they disappear, it's because maybe they've glided naturally into a theta state, and boom, they see the apparition, and then the shock takes them out of it, and then the apparition just fades away, just gone. Well, it's you know, because I think that perhaps we're pretty big facilitators of our experience, you know, in a lot of this stuff, and we don't know it. But yeah, that's
absolutely, and that's the whole thing about life, is that it's subjective.
Yes,
to you and you alone, and anything you experience is directly just to you. Now you can say, well, I had an experience where this kite flew over the sky and smashed into this truck, and, you know, my friend saw it too. Okay, true. But your friend didn't see it through your eyes, through your senses, or through your understanding of what was occurring. May not have felt the same thing. Right. So all experiences is subjective.
It is.
And it's the experience that lands the platform for everything that follows it. The timing, the instance of when it occurred, which are all human constructs.
Yeah.
And we were talking about that too, is that, you know, if you ask somebody to tell you, okay, do you like ice cream? And they said, yeah, I do. Okay, without using the human construct of time, tell me when you had the last bowl of ice cream. it's a physical impossibility. You can't
Yeah.
do it. So if spirits don't have time and space, which is a theory, now whether it's true or not, but that's the theory, then, because people always ask us, well, what rate do their voices come in at? What frequency? Well, frequency is a human construct of time and the relationship of how fast the wave circulates and the angle at which the wave is heightening at. So how do you say how a spirit's communicating to you if that reference of time is not there for them?
That's true. Good point. Is there a sweet spot for this though? Like as you're using Staticom, is there like a frequency range that you find more responsive than others as you're doing this?
There is, based on what we consider to be frequency, but the only thing I can say about it is we can tell what those frequencies are once they're converted to the human audible hearing. So in other words, did they come in at those frequencies? I can't answer that.
Okay.
When Staticom manipulates them, they range from 300 hertz to 1.3 kilohertz.
Oh, wow. Okay. I've got a question in the chat here from Aussie Tiger, and he is asking, what is Tony and Cherie's thoughts on the SLS devices? And that's the structured light.
Yeah, we use those when they came out. The biggest concern with them is that you're using the camera, which is designed for the Xbox, and it is literally designed to find human-shaped figures to map their movement.
Okay.
So when you're aiming it at things, and we've tested it, you can aim it at a chair sometimes.
You built one too.
Yeah, I built one from scratch and programmed the coding for it. But I still ran into the same problems. The problem is that you have to take it with a grain of salt. Was it designed for paranormal? No.
Sure.
Does that mean it can't be used for paranormal? No. But you have to look at what it was designed to function as, and it was designed to find human figures and then map them out in a stick figure arena. It'll try to find them or as close to them as it can. Okay. So can you say with any certainty that if a stick figure shows up, that's something paranormal? No, you can't. And if I understand that the camera uses infrared, and one of the largest scans of infrared out there is from the Xbox camera. But does infrared allow it to see spirits that the human eye can't? Well, I can't answer that, but if I had to take an educated guess, I'd say no.
Yeah. I think that, again, it's another one of those devices that my opinion of a lot of this stuff is that you can't ever gauge your evidence on one device, but if you can get corroborating hits across several devices, to me that's much more reinforcing and reassuring that you're dealing with something anomalous here, rather than like again going to the Ovilus. Oh, it spit out find me, or who are you?
Right.
But everything else is dead quiet. But if you get, K2 hit, REM pod, and other things firing off too, that to me seems much more, especially across several different detection methods. If it's all just EM detection, well then they're all going to flash or fire off based upon an energy reading. But if you have different detection methods, then to me that just makes it more empowering and certainly convincing. But is there any, I just want to bring this up with you because I've played with phone apps. I think a lot of them are garbage, but I think there may be some out there that I don't know, again, that might really have some interesting stuff. Just a little background. I did an investigation on the 7th with my friend and co-investigator, Charles Howard Johnson, and we were at this haunted bar, and we were alone there, and we were getting several different readings off of the pyramid thing that I was discussing. whatever that damn thing's called. I can never remember. But also the REM pod, also a K2 meter firing, and all three of those use a little different methods to detect. So the fact that they were firing in sequence, but then we had this thing called Spirit Talker on a phone app. And it's been made pretty well known on a lot of ghost hunting shows, if you will. But I've been playing with it and had some surprising results. Well, I was doing a live stream on the YouTube feed, and I pointed over to another section of the bar. I said, "Yeah, that's where Charles and I are going to be sleeping tonight." And then we talked, and it was like a minute and a half or 2 minutes later, the thing said, "Don't sleep here." It's like, oh no, what? So what are your thoughts on these phone apps? Do you think that there's any merit to them, or is there some, or what are your feelings?
Can I say
Sure.
something?
Please.
Well, first of all, phone apps, I am not really fond of phone apps because nowadays the phone apps runs on AI.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
It can, but it can also do so many other things that people don't even think about. It can track your GPS. So if you start approaching a location that's your place to investigate, and let's say it's a haunted castle or fortress or something, and it starts throwing out words like sword fight and cannon, and it could do that because the technology in a phone would allow that. It can get access to your mic and catch something you're saying and spit out something that is related to it. So the amount of scrutiny that has to be applied is huge.
Right.
And the more advanced phones get, the more scrutiny has to be attached to them. The only thing I'm going to say is that when, again, there is evidence that certain instances can happen where something occurs that falls outside of that typical word bank that it's using. A response that, and you won't know this from an app unless you created the word bank yourself.
Right.
But when information with timing and relevance can reply to a question asked, that may say, okay, did it use white noise? Is there a method that they were able to respond and control? And we've seen instances where it has spit out things that we went, wait, how did that happen? So does it occur? Yes. But when you're downloading the app and it says right on it for entertainment purposes only,
Sure.
Not a good sign that you're getting something that's reliable. But do instances, I'm going to slow down to pronounce my words here. Do instances occur that fall outside of it? Yes, they can, and they have.
Fair enough. And ladies and gentlemen in the chat, you guys can join in the conversation. Just put your questions in all capitals so they really stick out to me, because when I listen to Tony and Cherie, I end up in my own world of thought and ideas and stuff. And I'm probably not paying attention as much as I should. So if I miss questions, please retype them, but just put them in all caps because then I'll see them more consistently. They stick out. But yeah, I think that there is a lot of pseudoscience in all of this, and there's a lot of suggestion, and I think there's a lot of scams in as well. And
right.
I just really appreciate the fact that the way that you're coming at this is from a very, for lack of a better word, a clinical, scientific approach. Like you're not, making stone soup here. You're using tried and true methods. You're adapting them. You are evolving them into the next step. And that to me, again, is so exciting and groundbreaking.
Thank you.
Yeah. How has the reception to STATICOM been? Because you're basically introducing a whole new approach. Do you find pushback on what you're doing, or do you find that people are generally on board with the concepts?
It depends on the personality and what their philosophy of life is. We have people that absolutely love it. We have people that can't get enough of it. And then on the flip side, we've got people that won't even acknowledge or listen for themselves because they're like, come on, you still running this scam?
Oh.
It's not a scam. This is legit. This thing works. But it's no different than if you were standing out on the street and randomly walking up to people and saying, "Hey, can I ask you a question?"
Right.
You're going to get some people like, "Oh, absolutely. What do you need to know?" And you're going to get other ones like, "Oh, don't bug me. Leave me alone. Get away from me." And it's that same thing. And we realized 12 years ago of the 15 that we're not ever going to convince somebody.
Sure.
If somebody's got an interest and they're willing to take the time to listen, review it, hear it function, they're probably going to walk away going, "Oh my God, that was incredible."
Mm-hmm.
If we can't get them to do that, there's no sense to force it because that's their mindset, and that's fine.
Yeah. Do you find that you run into a lot of and this is really epidemic in the Bigfoot field? I don't know how prevalent it is in the spirits or ghosts investigation kind of field, but there's a lot of egos. There's a lot of
Huge.
Oh, okay. So you're experiencing that as well?
Yeah, I mean, everything from people trying to restrict locations to, it's I want the glory for this. If anyone's ever going to figure out answers to something that we know almost nothing about, it's not going to be done by one person. It takes everybody's experiences, everybody's knowledge, and everybody's contribution of that knowledge and evidence to be able to place small pictures in the entire puzzle piece to have that picture start to form.
Right. Yeah, I agree. We got a comment in chat. I love the fact that it uses just white noise and no word bank. The words have had accents and inflections. That's from Tower Paranormal Investigations said that. And then I've got a question in here from Rachel Gets It Right, who's one of the mods in my chat. And she's asking, if you've explored locations that have had tragic events, are the replies centered around the voices expressing shock and trauma, or are the responses calm words?
It depends. That's a great question. It depends on who's answering. Because we believe that spirits are not bound to time and space, it doesn't matter whether we're in a haunted location or not. We can get responses from anyone, anywhere, at any time. What we have noticed, though, is that when we've taken it to haunted locations, like we were in Tombstone, and they were giving responses about the bird cage, gambling, the liquor that was being served, the prostitution that was happening at that time.
Uh-huh.
So can the location influence the responses given? Absolutely. But does the location itself, is that needed to get responses? No, it's not.
Okay. Yeah. Do you find then that in some cases, like for instance, the Tombstone example you just brought up, would that imply that they're still perhaps locked in their own time / experience in some cases, where it's almost like you're reaching across time rather than across a veil, or does it seem like maybe that's their afterlife experience? Again, I'm asking you to be hugely speculative here, but
of course.
Yeah.
I don't think they're locked anywhere. Okay. You were talking about prior about energy.
Mm-hmm.
Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration.
Right.
And that's a profound statement, because even furniture sitting in your kitchen chair, is energy, frequency, and vibration. Those atoms, molecules are held together by that tight vibration of them together. And when you extrapolate that out to the universe or even the afterlife, white noise, guess what white noise is? Energy, frequency, and vibration. Oh. If consciousness, spirit, or whatever turns into energy, frequency, and vibration, then that is literally the sole energy source for communicating the information back and forth, which is what stochastic resonance uses to bring these voices out. So the connection just grows wider and wider and wider. And then to turn around and say that the principles of physics, where energy can't be created or destroyed, it can only change form. How do you trap that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good, fair enough. And I'm sorry for the really ambiguous questions. It's just me just having a feeding frenzy here mentally with what you're talking about.
Don't be sorry. We love the questions.
Okay.
Now, am I saying that what I'm responding is 100% correct? No,
Sure.
not by any means, but we're expanding on what we know science was able to explain. And then people will throw science out and say, well, if it's paranormal, science can't answer anything about that.
Right.
But then they'll turn around and get some piece of evidence and then try to explain it and verify it with a piece of scientific evidence.
Right.
It's like, wait, you just threw it out. You can't bring it back. It can't work for you in this situation, but you're going to throw it out in this one. So we try to avoid that as well. We try to keep everything that we believe is happening consistent within what the basic science foundation states.
Yeah. Tracy Pinot's in the chat, and she says, and Tony and Cherie were at 2 different locations in Tombstone getting awesome answers. That's now not counting the hotel they were at.
That's true. Yes. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the most mind-blowing things was the way that Staticom functions. And there are times, even after all the years, that we'll get an answer that Cherie and I will just look at each other and go, did we hear that right? What? Where did that come from? Of course, we always record it, so we go back and listen, and sure enough, that's what was said. And Staticom was even having a little difficulty when we were in Tombstone, but answers still came through.
Tracy was there. She also experienced, stuff.
The responses.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thanks, Tracy.
That's really cool. Sinfully Wicked, one of my regular chatters here says, what is your view on gifted people? Do you think they pick up more spirits willing to talk to them?
That's another great question. If we take a look at how we believe, because I'll hold something up and I'll ask Staticom, what am I holding? And they'll tell me what I'm holding. How are they getting that information? Well, because the one person who knows what I'm holding is me. And if I'm thinking I'm holding a pair of scissors and they respond back scissors, I'm giving them that information.
Okay.
So to answer his question, remind me what he asked again. I'm sorry.
What is your view on gifted people? Do you
yes.
think they pick up more spirits willing to talk to them?
So we believe that people who truly have gifted abilities are more porous in the sense of the human body being sort of the barrier between the living and the consciousness inside the body, and are able to access that information, whether it be through feelings, thought, imagery, and they're more porous in the sense that they can pull that information from universal consciousness and then describe it back to whoever's asking, what are you feeling? What are you sensing? And we believe it works in a similar fashion. That's a great question.
Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating for sure. I've always been very, very envious of those people that can just contact and they can just make these connections. I think it's incredible and profound and just amazing.
We agree with that. We can't.
Lucky,
very lucky.
We
people.
don't have the ability of like.
We don't. That's why we build equipment.
We'll stick to that.
Yeah. Likewise, I certainly am not gifted in that manner either. Jed Maxwell in our chat says, question, do you think tinnitus is connected to frequency or to spirits?
That's an excellent question. And also because I work for a hearing aid company.
Oh.
But tinnitus being a ringing in the ear could be. I don't want to state that as proof or medical anything, but is it possible? Yes. And the other thing that statement and question attaches itself to is that people claim all the time to hear voices in white noise, whether that be a sleep machine, whether that be a fan, an air conditioner. And science says, no, your brain's looking for patterns in white noise, which is random, and white noise isn't truly random. But if we're pulling voices out using white noise, why could people not actually be hearing the voices through white noise alone? Because when Ron and Lourdes started with direct radio voice, they started using only white noise on a big 1980s boombox world band radio. Oh. And after a while, the white noise produced speech.
Wow. So do you think, and again, getting back to my theory that I voiced earlier about us being very, very intrinsically involved in these processes, like the person themselves is a strong part of the experience, not only because they're there to receive the messages, but I think that we also create a circuit in a manner of, I don't know, maybe it's a spiritual manner, maybe it's energetic, and then therefore Staticom or something else becomes the medium through which we're able to connect in a more physical and mundane way. But God, I forgot what I was going to ask you.
I think you were relating to the method of, does the person have impact on what occurs?
Right. Thank you. What do you think?
But you're absolutely right. Okay. When they tested Marcello Bacci in a scientific lab, trying to figure out how these voices were coming through his vacuum tube radio, they pulled vacuum tube one at a time and kept saying, if I pull the first one, you still get voices, I'll be impressed. If I pull the second one and you still get voices, I'll be overwhelmed. And then the scientist said, if I pull the third one and you still get voices, I'll eat it. Well, he pulled the third one. Marcello still got voices. And then he said to the scientist, don't eat that. That's glass. But the point was that the scientists that were evaluating it couldn't dismiss it. They couldn't figure out how it was happening. But the only thing they could remove from the equation to make the voices stop were Marcello himself. The operator. Wow. So is there a connection between the person doing it to the spiritual realm or to consciousness? Absolutely, we believe there is.
Yeah. And I agree. I think that's very powerful. As a side note, just to those members in the chat, Shelley Montgomery's asking, I'd like to know if anyone who is an experiencer here has twins run in the family. It's something I'm interested on connecting some dots. So if any of you do in the chats, just say yes to Shelley, or if not, then I guess say nothing. But she was asking me to do a poll.
Sure.
And that is another interesting phenomena is, of course, twins. A lot of times twins can have this strange connection that defies space and time, and like they are truly connected. And perhaps through our desire to connect with these other things, we're just trying to mimic the connection they have naturally. I don't know. Yeah,
could be.
Yeah,
could be.
Very fascinating. Let me look and see if I'm missing any questions here before we move on. That explains. Okay, so Sinfully Wicked said, okay, that explains what I can get. Thank you very much. She's responding because you responded to her question. So.
My pleasure.
Okay, what are their thoughts on infrasound from nocturnal frequency radio and the possibility of it being a key to patching into some sort of Akashic archive? Wow.
Well, I mean, I don't have in-depth knowledge from infrasound connection to the Akashic record. Is it possible? It is. Again, if we go back to consciousness or universal consciousness being an ontological primitive, meaning the primary building block, and that being made up of energy, frequency, and vibration, infrasound is something, deep tones that can be produced by lions, elephants, and there's one other animal, I can't remember what it is, but
tigers,
to the point where it may not even be heard, but it'll be felt. That's all energy, frequency, and vibration. And if the entire universe and possibly the afterlife is constructed to energy, frequency, and vibration, I guarantee you there are connections intertwining those far beyond what humans are even aware of.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy. It just boggles my mind what is lying out there just waiting for us to discover it. And again, that's why I'm so excited about what you guys are doing, because you're really cracking into a whole new realm of possibilities. Got another question from chat. Chucky Danger, one of our mods and oftentimes a contributor to the show. He says, have you thought about using your device to communicate with the orbs that seem to be global at the moment? Oh, or asking about them. Have you thought about that?
No, it wasn't a thought that we had discussed or brought up. And not that it's not an interesting thought process. And could we do it? Absolutely, we could. The biggest problem with what STATICOM is capable of doing is that there are hundreds of millions of questions. And we've been asked everything like, did you ask if Atlantis exists? How were the pyramids built? I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. And you could spend your lifetime just asking questions to see what answer you got. And we haven't finished even the research yet. We don't know the limitations of STATICOM. And recently, we just determined that there that there is a configuration concern that we're working on correcting, which has had some unbelievable results in what we've already adjusted and changed.
The only thing that you can ask STATICOM is the Powerball number.
Yeah, you can't ask those. We've tried 100,000 times. They will not answer that. Yeah. And why do we believe that to be the case? Plain and simply, it is because, the average normal human person can't see spirits, can't hear them. There's a reason the body was designed the way it was. And we believe that the life that you're here now is a learning process for your soul or consciousness. And that's to grow universal consciousness when it returns with knowledge, experiences. And if spirits could just answer any question, that life that you were set here to do would change. And you wouldn't learn what you were brought here to learn. If I won, $500 million or through the lottery, would I maybe stop the process that would maybe I'd probably go buy an island and go fishing every day. But that's obviously not what I was put here to do. So when we ask for the Powerball numbers, they don't answer.
Yeah. Well, it'd be kind of like the fruitful labors of graduate students in college using AI to write their term paper. It's like, yeah, that's not how that's supposed to work.
Correct. Exactly.
Yeah. Yep. Sinfully Wicked says, laugh out loud. Cherie, I get asked that a lot. And I said, if I could, I'd be a billionaire. Fair enough. Yeah. I think it's, there does seem to be borders or boundaries, and it comes up a lot. And you had mentioned how you just hit a wall sometimes, and it's just like, nope, that's done. And then, and it is bizarre, and I've often wondered about that. Is there potentially some guidelines within which they have to operate, or is it have to do with more energetic factors that happen to align at one point and maybe they move out of alignment and therefore the conversation stops? But it does seem really surprising, and I've experienced this when I'm doing my own investigations. Sometimes you'll ask a question and then everything just flatlines. It's like, oh, was it something I said? So does that make sense to you, or do you think that might be possible?
Absolutely, it makes sense to us.
Okay.
In fact, with STATICOM, we've had a spirit or consciousness answering almost every question we asked. And we were getting excited because I was ready. I had a list that I was going to keep asking.
Sure.
But then we had other voices show up and say, stop answering. You shouldn't be answering these. Multiple other voices telling her, don't answer that. You can't answer that. So the question became, okay, who are these others? How come she doesn't know if we are hearing 5 or 6 other ones saying, don't tell them that. You can't tell them that.
Wow. Yeah.
And so there's that aspect. Then there's other aspects, like I said, about we're not supposed to know any of this. And so that wall where there's certain things they can say, and then there's a limit where they know they can't go beyond. And one of those limits that we have never gotten an answer to is about, is there a God? They don't, that has never been, the closest response we ever got was, I asked what holiday was coming up and they said Easter. And I said, yeah, you're correct. And then one of them said, that's Jesus. And I said, have you seen Jesus? And then the answer was, no, we haven't. And then some little girl's voice came on and said, where is he? Where is he? But that was the only response we've ever gotten to a question like that.
Wow. It's almost like the old party line, isn't it, from way back in the day?
It absolutely is. And that's exactly what it sounds like. It sounds like you're standing outside of a huge party.
Yeah.
But everyone's speaking at the same level. So we had to adjust Staticom to be able to pull voices up and out from the crowd.
We also asked them a question. I know Tony doesn't want me to ask a question to the spirit, like how they die.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, why did you ask that? I get yelled at. So I'm like, I'm just curious, you know.
Right.
And then the spirit says that he had cancer.
Yeah, he answered, and we've never had that happen before. Yeah. And I'd always tell her, don't ask that, because we're asking them a question and they're answering clearly. They're not dead. But how did you pass away from being human bound? You know, that makes sense. But yeah, the spirit clearly said, I had cancer.
It's so amazing. And to all the audience, you guys can also watch those video clips on.
Yeah, all those clips are on the Staticom Project YouTube channel.
Wow. Yeah, and we've got some clips we'll get into in a little bit here as well that you sent over. I'm excited to do that. So we'll get into those as well. But JC has a question in chat. He says, is there a correlation between sounds and emotions?
Well, I mean, technically, from a physics standpoint, there are tones that will produce various emotions. In fact, frequency, which sound produces, is vibrations of atmospheric conditions, which can be felt by the body. And different levels of vibration will create emotional states, which will cause emotions. So absolutely, that's possible.
And I think you're right, because I mean, even from the example of infrasound, like tigers use infrasound, which is a subsonic sound to disorient their prey, and that's certainly causing a bizarre emotional response in what they're about to kill. So I think that's true. And of course, classical music has long been shown to be both relaxing, soothing, and can even raise your IQ a few points while you listen to it. So,
correct.
Which I need all the time. Trust me.
Me too.
But no, that's fantastic. And you know, I mean, this is great. I appreciate you guys fielding these questions, because, you know, we have some a wonderful audience, and they are always so well engaged, and they got a million questions, and oftentimes I can't answer them. So I'm glad.
I'll mask away.
Hot potato. Grandizer 12 comes in with a question. He says, which paranormal tech has the guest seen more advancements in? Which tech needs a solid upgrade if possible? And where do you see the tech be at in 10 years? Happy holidays. So that's a 3-part question.
Yeah. There's so much out there, and most tech is versions of something that was or existed prior.
Yeah.
So tech has not advanced much at all. Now, if you take a look at like phone apps, if you call that tech, those have evolved because technology in phones has evolved. But EMF meters have been around a long time, and they're still coming out with new ones today. Did they do anything different? No, they just look different or have different switches. So, what tech needs the biggest upgrade? That's a hard thing to answer, because until you would specify one and then be able to take a look at, okay, how does it operate? What's the situation behind how they believe it functions? Is there validity behind that? Do we know that it's doing something, or has it created results that show anomalies from what its main purpose was built for? So to answer that is really difficult, because there's so many variables involved. But what the paranormal field truly needed was an advancement in tech, and hopefully STATICOM will be part of that advancement.
And I think one of the biggest crippling things for this is that unfortunately the labor of validating this stuff is falling to people like you and anyone else that's researching, and we're not scientists per se. We may have an understanding of a scientific method or scientific methodologies, but since the mainstream sciences are largely ignoring this whole segment of phenomena, whether it's cryptids, whether it's ghosts, spirits, UFOs, all this stuff, it's been up to laymen and women to pick up the mantle and to try to progress this. And unfortunately, all we've had available is these borrowed technologies until, developments like yours has come along. That's at least, taking a whole novel approach and trying to expand it. So, I think that's a big thing. And I really celebrate people like yourselves that are being innovators, and you're working on solving these dilemmas and looking for solutions and making incredible progress in a field that's been largely stagnant for, largely a century, really.
Right.
Yeah. So
thank you. We appreciate that. We really do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of what you're doing. Maggie M10, and I think she's referencing any of your discussions through these sessions. Do they say they come back, or is human form a one-time thing, please?
We've asked about reincarnation, and they flat out said, yes, it occurs.
Okay. So it's not just a one-time thing as far as...
and you asked a question earlier about human curiosity about what happens after death. Mm-hmm. Deep down, somewhere inside our consciousness, we know, because we've been there. And that, we believe, is part of the validation of us trying to determine what happens after, because part of us, a small portion, already knows that there's more than just this. And we believe that facilitates this, I don't even know how many thousands of years search for what happens after you die. But it is ingrained in all of us that either we're hoping there's more, or we think there might be more. And where does that come from? Well, you can say, well, you're taught it in religion and, all sorts of other things, but there is some ingrained self-awareness, I believe, of it.
Yeah. I think so as well. I think you're absolutely on top of that. Another question in the chat: have you ever had a spirit say it can see you? And this is from Sinfully Wicked 67 again. She's asking.
We have. In fact, we've done tests where we've held up objects. They told us what we were holding. We've asked what color my shirt was. They told me the color. We've held up fingers, saying, how many fingers am I holding up? They've answered it correctly. And even vaguer questions like, who just walked into the room? Or what's this person's name? And those answers have come through. We've had people write messages on a piece of paper and put it in a hidden location where nobody running STATICOM saw anything. And then we'd ask what word was written, and they'd say the word that was written.
Wow. That's bizarre, isn't it? I mean, it's just they can be so plugged into our experience like that, and still we're just, receiving just a fraction of what they're experiencing. So, wow.
Correct.
That's great. Shelley's asking, will I be at the conference? Do you mean the conference next September? Yes, my plan is to be there. Sorry, it's just a side chat.
No, don't be sorry.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'm sorry, Cherie, what were you gonna say?
Oh no, I said, oops.
Oh no, it's fine. I'm just looking. Okay, all Grandizer are saying thank you for taking my question.
Absolutely.
Let me get down and see if I've been holding it. Okay. Rachel gets it right again, comes back and says, what world location that you haven't visited yet would you love to go to?
There's a lot.
There's a lot. There's parts of Europe with all the castles, Scotland, Ireland. We have not been there yet. And because of the thousands of years of history, that's one place that is absolutely on our bucket list.
Do you find that, and I know it's not exclusively specific locations, but that some locations are just so much more resonant and active in your sessions than others? Do you think location plays into this?
Without a doubt.
Okay.
I mean, you've got factors, again, all attached to energy, frequency, and vibration that will have a huge effect on what you're getting and the answers coming through, and whether it's highly directed to the location or the building. And not only us, but our counterparts as well have taken this method into some of the most haunted locations out there, the Shanley Hotel and others. And even when you're in that location with this huge history and all sorts of tragic accidents, a lot of times you'll have people in the audience that don't want to hear about the location or its history. They want to know what happened to Uncle Bob and how he's doing. And STATICOM has the ability to do that. So it's answering the question about a location having an influence on the machine, but also the fact that the machine can literally get answers from whatever it's being asked.
Very cool. Another question in the chat. Red Edge Savage asks, have you had an actual voice out of thin air, a disembodied voice?
Yes, that's called direct voice.
Okay.
And we had to evaluate that when we started to put the STATICOM method together. The natural environment contains white noise. And if they can manipulate white noise in a closed system such as STATICOM, they can surely do it in an environment. And if they can manipulate their frequency and vibration to overlap frequencies within white noise to have it be elevated, which is how STATICOM works, there's absolutely no reason why that same principle couldn't be affected in the natural environment with white noise sound to make that sound audible to the point that the human ear can hear it.
Okay.
And yes, we've experienced that many times.
Okay. Got another question. This one's a little different, but it's from Jed Maxwell in the chat. He's asking, if you recall the original Ghostbusters movie, the building that was haunted was built specifically to communicate with the spirits. And do you believe this could exist in reality? Do you think that there's metallurgy and construction techniques that may empower the ability to communicate with spirits, I guess is what he's asking?
Yeah, I mean, that is a possibility. I wouldn't be able to go into any of the specifics, but again,
sure,
you've got materials that can retain energy. You've got materials that can release energy. Quartz crystal is a prime example, and there are others.
Sure. So
based on the geographical elements within a location, would it be feasible then to assume that if it was highly saturated with quartz, that energy could be absorbed and then released at a later time, causing some sort of change in the energy and frequency to increase or decrease communication, yeah, it is feasible.
Sure. Yeah, and I think it is too. Again, there's certainly plenty of suggested evidence that would imply that there's certainly materials can do just that they can they resonate or amplify or whatever and create a more perfect environment for that energy to come through, I think, in my opinion. Tower Paranormal Investigations says, did you mention the time STATICOM was tested in a mine that couldn't pick up radio or phone signals?
Yeah, that was part of how we developed STATICOM into the system it is today. But Ron and Lourdes went into a zinc mine, which, being underground, acted like a natural Faraday cage, blocking out radio signal.
Sure.
So other investigators that were there had spirit boxes. They got no radio signals. Therefore, the spirit box, based on the theory of how it was presented to work, without having that, there were no fragments of audio for spirits to put together. They didn't get anything.
Oh, okay.
DRV was actually what was used at that time. It was able to still get voices, and the only device that was able to do it.
Oh.
But that's when we realized radio wave literally had nothing to do with the transference of communication.
Okay. And the DRV was a closed loop as well. That was a sample of white noise.
Correct.
Okay.
The only difference is that the white noise was generated from a radio. And of course, we wanted to remove the radio because that's what scientists said. You can't count anything you're getting as legit because you're using a radio. You're looking for speech from the other side using a radio that's designed to pull in speech.
Right. Yeah.
So we removed it.
Very cool. Elaine Clifford comes in and says, if going to another country, will there be a language barrier? So are spirits communicating in these various tongues, or are they not?
Last time we were in the Philippines, we got responses in English, Tagalog, Japanese, and Latin.
Wow.
Now, luckily, Cherie speaks English, Tagalog, and Japanese, so we were able to understand those. Did they choose those languages because she knew? Of course, I can speak English, so that one I would have got. But the other two, I wouldn't have, but Cherie would have. The only response we got in a language we didn't know what it said was Latin. And we had that translated for us by somebody who spoke it. And sure enough, the answer given, even though we didn't understand it, answered the question we asked.
But let me clarify that.
Sure.
When we went to the Philippines, it wasn't a STATICOM.
No.
But yes, we did have a different language when we're using a STATICOM with a different language.
Oh, you're talking about the TDSI? Digital Science Initiative? Yeah, we've had people come up and ask questions in different languages, Spanish, Italian. And then we had a gentleman come up and ask his question in his Native American language.
Oh, wow.
And STATICOM will answer them in the language they asked. When the gentleman asked his Native American language, I don't know if he was, playing around, just wanted to see what would happen or how we'd react. We didn't do anything. We let him ask. And then we let him listen. And all of a sudden his face just went white. His jaw dropped. And I said, did you get your answer? He said, yeah, in my language.
And the STATICOM changes language too, because we can't understand.
Yeah, we had no idea what was said. But I'm like, and I said to Cherie, I'm like, that doesn't sound like English.
Yeah.
And it wasn't.
Oh, that's very interesting. Sinfully Wicked comes back and again and says, sorry to be a pest, and please don't feel like you guys can only ask so many questions. Ask away. We'll get to whatever we get to. But she says, but I'm curious if you ever got any responses from any fae or fairies.
Well, that would be really hard for us to know. And people ask us, well, if you believe you can speak to consciousness, can you speak to aliens? Here's the thought process behind it, is that if a fairy speaks in English or any other language that is known on Earth, we wouldn't know who's answering. All we would know is what they answered. We can't identify who is responding.
Sure.
Now, the question about aliens is that unless they have in-depth knowledge of human life, it would be like trying to translate squeaks and squeals from dolphins.
Oh,
we can translate any language to any language because our environment, our social factors, everything around us is consistent. So it's just a matter of determining what phrases, vowel sounds are used for that object, that action, that verb. But for something like a dolphin, where there is no direct correlation, we can't translate dolphin into human.
right.
So like an alien from a whole nother atmosphere, universe, whatever, that would pose the same problem.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah. I always wonder about, because language is our, I mean, we use language as our, utilizing our audio abilities and the ability to create sound as a method of conveying thoughts because we don't use telepathy. But I was always wondering, you know, in terms of you getting answers in languages that you were able to understand, or the other gentleman getting it in his First Nations language because he could understand it, in that, I don't know, what am I trying to say? Like, maybe it isn't language as much as it is thought, and it's delivered us in a manner with which we can receive it, you know?
Correct. And if universal consciousness is all one,
Yeah.
then there would be no language they couldn't answer in, because universal consciousness is made up of all the individual consciousness combined,
Yeah.
and all knowledge is there. So like when the question comes up, you know, you're asking them to use static. How would they even know what that is? Computers weren't even around. That knowledge is in universal consciousness.
Sure.
There is nothing they wouldn't know that we don't know.
Yeah, and so that would be another way of saying Akashic records then, wouldn't it?
Correct. Yeah. The term Akashic records is no different than universal consciousness.
Right. Yeah, fair enough. I love what you had to say on that. Red Edge Savage says, what are your thoughts on higher resonance or activity with underground water flows? I heard Stonehenge has underground streams. I think he means 3 of them.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of speculation that flowing water, which produces energy, water being a high conductor of electricity or electronic phenomena. Mm-hmm. Could there be a correlation? Of course there could, because again, if everything's energy, frequency, and vibration, and you've got a material that is a conducting force of that, mm-hmm. Can there be? Absolutely, there could be, yes.
Sure. Yeah, fair enough. Chucky Danger's asking, does the device maybe pick up telepathic communication?
Well, again, in order to answer that, we would have to determine what telepathic communication is. Now, I know the term. I'm not playing stupid. What I'm saying is breaking it down into how is telepathic communication transferred.
Sure.
If we're talking consciousness to consciousness, then that transfer is a combination of energy, frequency, and vibration. And I know I keep saying this, sounding like a broken record, but that is the building blocks of everything.
Sure.
So if something's being transmitted telepathically, and the fact that I said that stochastic resonance picks up these sound signals that are beyond our reach or human detectability, mm-hmm. then all of that lines up saying, yes, that what you're saying, can Staticom pick up telepathic communication? There's nothing to say that that's not what we're picking up.
Right.
Through white noise, and stochastic resonance.
Yeah, absolutely. What about the 8:30 mark? We got about a half hour left. Did you want to dive into some of these samples so that everybody can hear STATICOM in action? Is there any specific one you'd like me to start with, or does it matter?
Nope, feel free to anyone you want.
Okay, so it's probably going to cover up you guys as that's my display monitor. But I'm going to open this one. Ladies and gentlemen, these are examples of STATICOM in action, so you can see the process yourself. And yeah, let's check it out. And that was a quick one. Let's check that one out again. And Tony Rathman.
And just a quick explanation on that. We were in a haunted location in North Carolina, and for the first time, I saw a full-bodied, full-color apparition of about a 10 or 11-year-old girl. That hadn't happened to me. Not shadow figures, stuff like that I've seen, but never a full-bodied, full-color apparition.
Wow.
When we turned STATICOM on, that was one of the first things that came out that night. And again, Tony Rathman, first and last name, can see, meaning they knew I had seen what I had just saw.
So just out of curiosity, how did that go for you? Was it like, I just saw a ghost, or was it like, oh, cool, I see one?
No, I mean, I was a little taken back because I had not seen that before. And I looked up at the stairs and I saw her standing at the very corner. And then one of the other investigators, friend of ours, Chris, says, do you see her? And I said, yeah, she's standing right on it. And he goes, yep. And then I saw her again, and I saw her stick her head out the window when we were all outside. Oh. And yeah, it blew me away.
Yeah, you jumped.
I did the first time I did, yeah.
Yeah, I think I would too. You know, you're just not ready to see it until it's
right
there.
You don't expect it.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the next one, and this is another example of STATICOM.
Can you say Tony? Did you just say Rathman? Yep. So you know who I am. Can I know who you are? Yes, sir. Thank you. Who am I speaking to?
Wow. That's powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I asked, they knew who I was. I said, can you say Tony? They said Anthony Rathman, which is my legal name. And I said, you know who I am? Can I know who you are? Chip Padham and Harold Patter, first and last names.
Yeah. That's such a cool thing, you know, to be making this kind of connection. Do you mind if we field a couple questions?
No, go right ahead.
Okay, Maggie's asking, do you get worried about attracting something not so great using this?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're dealing with something with what's classified as paranormal, we don't classify it as that because we believe it's natural. It's part of everything. It's part of nature. This stuff exists and occurs, and there's nothing paranormal. It's normal. We're just figuring out how to access it. But that doesn't take away the fact that there are dark, negative, and I don't like to use the word because it gets so overused today in TV and YouTube, but demonic.
Yeah.
Even though it's rare, very rare.
Yeah.
Do you still have to be aware, cautious, and know that you could run into that? Yes, you do. Yes.
Yeah.
But the good thing about doing the vocal and using STATICOM is that people always ask us, have you ever detected residual energy after they've been speaking to you? And the answer to that is no, because it would be the difference between me going over to my neighbor's house, sitting down, talking for an hour, then getting up and leaving. You could detect the heat on the chair. You might be able to detect, I don't know, other things of the fact that I was there.
Your cologne.
Because they're not defined by time or space, for them to answer, they don't have to come here. They don't have to come to my studio to talk to me in my studio. And therefore, that helps eliminate, I believe, some of the danger, because we've been doing this now 15 years and not run into any concerns so far with audio communication.
Yeah. I know Ron had some samples of that one guy that was just horrible. I mean, it was just some dark presence. It wasn't necessarily an evil presence, but just sounded like a horrible person.
Yeah, he that was from the Shanley Hotel. It was a 1.7 or 8 second rant.
Oh God, yeah, it was just
from
dark.
A spirit, and he was not happy.
Yeah, just a foul person. All right, let's get to another example. Oh, there was another question here. In regards to the telepathic questions, have you tried any test where you have asked a person a question and the device picks up their I think that meant to say response, just by them thinking the answer?
Yes. In fact, as I was stating earlier, I don't have to actually physically vocalize my question. And the reason we know that is way back from EVP research, when we did that, is that a lot of times the answer would show up on the recorder before I even finished asking the question. Staticom has helped us determine why that is because me vocalizing my speech doesn't have anything to do with them getting the message.
Right.
Because the range of my speech is only going to go so far till it dissipates within the atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's not traveling, hundreds of miles.
Right.
So we did tests where instead of asking the question, and then we would do this during our sessions too with the public, and I'd say, if you have a question you want to know, but you're too embarrassed to ask in front of a group of people, just come up and think it. And sure enough, they would get their answer.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's fantastic. And that makes sense to me. I've had that same phenomena happen when I was investigating, even using the devices that I have available to me. Like, correct. I'll just start to think, I got to ask this, and then boom, the light will go off. It's like, no, wait till I ask it. Because like I'm filming it too, and it's like, well, that doesn't make compelling film, and it just goes off randomly because I can't pick up my thoughts on my camera. So I'm always like, hey, wait till I ask the question. So, all right, let's dive into another one of these, and this would be the energy of your mind.
Which answers the question she just asked.
Oh, perfect. All right, let's get to this one.
Oh. Can you say Tony? Did you just say Rathman? Yep. So you know who I am. Can I know who you are?
What?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Who am I speaking to?
She's going to...
How many spirits are with me right now? Did that say 8? How many spirits are with me right now? A lot? Where
I
are
think
you
that was a
at
duplicate.
right
Well, this is a really longer clip, so it's much longer. How long is this?
How do you hear me speak? do you hear me when I speak to you? Did you say they're dead? Yes. So you were once alive like me. Yes. So are you on this planet as well?
That's it right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, if I'm really speaking to people who had passed away from this planet, can you say hello, spirits? Sorry, you like being called spirits. Yep, okay.
Wow. That's really amazing. And it probably, you know, as I'm listening to it, I'm thinking, well, there really is words being shaped. But
Right.
and I'm sure it's probably through hours and hours of practice that you can really pick it out. As you put the words down there, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Now, if you hadn't put the words on some of those, I wouldn't have had any idea what it was saying. But
Yeah, and I'm not even sure how that got sent. That's not one of our best clips, but it does show the two-way communication, and that's important.
yes. Well, it's interesting also because it's also showing you like some mild irritation, some, you know, like maybe it wasn't the same voice you were talking to. Maybe you were dealing with a couple different presences there because it's
Without a doubt. Yep.
because it said a lot, but then you did get some responses, and then other times like I don't have to put up with this shit.
Right, and that's one of the factors
whole
we
range.
can't control. We can ask
Right.
questions till we're blue in the face,
Right.
but they have free determining factor whether they're going to answer us or not.
Right.
But we had these voices analyzed by audio engineers,
Mhm.
and the response came back that they have never heard the human pronunciation of vowels, diphthongs, consonants, vowels under any other circumstance than from Staticom that matched human speech, pauses, emotions, everything that is coherent in human speech that could not be produced from random noise.
Right. And again, this is a closed loop. That's what's so
Correct.
amazing. So it's not like you're getting some aberrant signal that might be punching its way through. I mean, you're not using any antenna, any external inputs.
It's a closed circuit.
Closely,
Yeah.
yeah, correct.
So, I mean, that's what really makes it profound. And, you know, and granted, some people may be like, well, I didn't really hear anything. Well, but yeah, it's not like they're making a telephone call here. They're talking probably. through a
Right. Yeah, it's not Sprint.
Can you hear me now? Not really, a little bit. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, just keep that in mind as you're listening. The next one is called I Had Cancer. This is the one.
Oh, that's the one
talking.
Cherie was talking about.
Okay, you guys ready to watch this? Let's do it.
Do you know how did you die?
Oh, wow, you could really hear that. Yeah, you could really hear that. It was like a female
Said
voice.
yes, and then I had cancer.
Yeah.
Did you guys get that it was a female voice too, or is that just me?
No, it sounds female.
Yeah, I thought so too. Wow. Let's listen to that one again. That's really profound. You didn't even need to have words up for that one. That was really
No.
clear.
Do you know how did you die?
Yeah, that's amazing. Just like that, boom. That's so powerful. And it's, you know, it's I mean, it's, of course it's tragic, but obviously they're okay, you know.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to the tone of voice under which she says it, she's not emotional about it. I mean, but she has a very clear understanding
Yeah.
of what transitioned her from here to wherever she is now. I had
Right.
cancer.
Yeah.
And then I think I hear the word, I could be wrong. I think I hear the word after she says that by somebody else saying smoking.
Oh, maybe she was a smoker. Yeah.
Could have been,
That
but
could do
I'm
it.
pretty sure I hear that at the end.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's a really cool sample. Red Edge Savage says, when ghost hunting, have you ever experienced muffled whispers of conversations and the common cold spots and drafts? I know I have. Not necessarily the muffled conversation as much, but the last investigation we did, it was like I was sitting in front of a blast chill, like a blast cooler. It was just, I was frozen through my body.
Yeah, absolutely. We have many locations, in fact. As far as the muffled conversations, yes, the one that stands out predominant to me is the Diplomat Hotel in Baguio City, Philippines.
Oh.
It was pouring rain that night. They had these weird gutter systems that literally took the water off the roof, ran it down this slot in the wall, and then it trickled out of the building in these little streams in the floor.
Oh.
Well, what we realize now is it created a white noise effect.
Sure it did.
We were in there 15 minutes, and Cherie says to me, and I've never seen Cherie scared or wanting to leave. She goes, "Can we go outside?" I said, "Cherie, what are you talking about? We've been here 15 minutes and it's pouring rain outside and you want to go outside?" She goes, "You can't hear them talking?" I said, "Yeah, I asked you that like 4 times in 15 minutes. Don't you hear that?"
I don't want to tell him because I'm really scared, and I'm like,
she wouldn't answer me.
Yeah.
And then finally I said, "Fine, let's go outside." She's like, "You can't hear that?" I said, "Yeah, I can hear it."
we can hear the
We can hear them
voice.
talking. In fact, it even showed up on the recorders.
Oh,
In
wow.
fact, Cherie, there's a clip on our YouTube for Entity Voices where Cherie asked like 5 questions, and I was repeating the answers I heard with my own ear that they had given when we played back the recording, that you could hear them say the whole sentence.
That's so wild. Jeez. Got another question in the chat from Jed Maxwell. Hypothetical. Could this device be used to communicate with the recently deceased and, for example, be used to find a killer? Potentially, I suppose, right?
Yes to both. There's people that say that when somebody passed, there's a certain amount of time that has to go by. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Could it be? It could. Could it be used to find killers? Yeah, I have no doubt that it could. That is how psychic mediums work.
Sure.
If the transition of information to a psychic is the same as how it's used in Staticom. In fact, one of the things I can think of was we were helping a medium out with some information she was trying to achieve. We recorded it for her, sent it to her. She turned around, sent it to the detective or officer that she was working for. Turned out that officer was FBI. We got a call a couple days later from the FBI going, "How did you get this information?"
Wow. Oh, dear. That's a little unnerving.
Somebody
It was.
with the family also.
Correct.
What is she
So
got?
obviously whatever was submitted rang some bells, and they wanted to know how we got it. So I explained. I said, it's a paranormal device. We built it.
Oof.
Then he asked if it was patented. I said, no. And he goes, "Why didn't you patent it?" I said, "Well, because it comes public knowledge then, and you could just look it up."
Yeah, true enough. True enough. That's fantastic. And I would probably just shudder like, oh my God, the FBI's calling me.
Well, I mean, it is scary because when you have a device that can give information that is unknown,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that would love to get a hold of that.
But imagine all the closure and all the beautiful things that could bring to help people dealing with grief and stuff like that. Like
That's true.
a lot of times I think of, the pain of losing a loved one, someone precious to you, is just so devastating. And I've lost some loved ones and it's been hard. And only by virtue of having what I believe to be very real dream meetings with them, I was in a lot of pain, but after that, it was just like, okay, well, I could release them. Well, this is another method that could really be incredibly helpful for those people trying to deal with that absence, that hole, that missing piece, and just to know that, oh, okay, they're okay. Because I think a lot of our pain just comes from, are they okay? I don't know where they are. I don't know how to, because these are people we love, and we would, in many cases, endure physical harm ourselves to protect them, and yet they're out of our hands. And so how beautiful would that be to...
Well, without a doubt, that was probably the most rewarding experience that has ever come from what STATICOM was capable of doing. Cherie and I have experienced it from many people that have come to our sessions. Ron and Lourdes have been doing this over and over and over, where people literally just write amazing responses saying, thank you so much. They'll recognize who was speaking to them, what message they were giving them, identified who they were. We had one just
a couple months ago.
No, that was like a month ago when we were in Sedona.
I think so.
They got to hear from a mother's son that passed away, and the daughter got to as well. And he gave past or phrases that they had agreed that if something happened that they'd give. He gave it. He gave his dog's name, and this was just absolutely mind and emotionally opening to them, and they're forever thankful, and it helps with the grieving process, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I wish that was something everybody could experience, that's dealing with that loss. But as this progresses and as it gets developed, and whatever your future plans for, I'm sure maybe they will. Red Edged Savage says, have you ever seen any weird smoky fogs or mists that seem creepily intelligent? I ask it because of my own experience as a child.
The only one I ever saw was before I believed any of this, and it was creeping up a old spiral staircase.
Oh, God.
And the only reason I even give it any validation is because I was young. I was just out of college, and my roommate at the time, we were talking about the spiral staircase, and he goes, "Do you ever see that fog coming up?" And the fact that he saw it too is, so I guess I have. I haven't really put in.
Not, but it's black fog.
No, this was white. This was white.
Oh, I thought it's black.
No, this was white fog crawling up the black stairs.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah, that's kind of.
But as far as intelligence to it, that I can't answer.
Wow.
It was a little creepy.
That is creepy, but in a good way. I think, it's
Yeah.
going to need to have. I was, I haven't seen a lot of physical manifestations, but I've seen a few, usually in the form of lights and orbs and stuff like that. But I have seen one apparition, and I was really glad that I saw it, because it was just like, wow, I actually saw that. Okay, I'm a knower, in terms of having experienced that phenomena. Let's get to this one. It says, I'd say glad to meet you.
Good one.
Let's check out this one.
Spirits, can you please try to communicate with us through this device? Who's watching?
Wow.
Bachi. That was clear. Do you want us to do the rumbling?
Bachi, are you keeping track of what we're doing?
Marcello, can you see us?
Yes.
Thank you. Marcello, you started this method. It's working. Can you please try to communicate with us?
Wow. That's so powerful. That's such a big sentence,
Huge, powerful emotion behind it. That you don't get that from spirit boxes.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Any number of devices, you might get a word or you might get a sound, but that's like, I'd say glad to meet you. It's like, wow, that's a whole sentence. That's amazing.
With the accent as well.
With an accent as well, you can hear the accent in the sentence.
And I think we covered this maybe the last time that you guys were on, but have you seen repeated presences, like any personalities consistently coming through for you guys?
Yeah, we've had repeats of certain personalities, but we've also had a slew of ones we don't even know who they are. Voices sound different to a degree, whether it's male or female, accent, no accent. But when you've been doing this for so long, it's really hard to determine unless you get a name or some information or a subject matter to relate them back to. It's hard to identify just by speech alone.
Sure. Yeah. Wow. This has been an incredibly fast 2 hours, though. I'll tell you that.
It has. But one of the things I'd like to say though about just that last one,
yeah,
if you hear how the power of the speech varied in that last clip,
yes,
from the responses of they asked me to be nice, or did you answer? I did, to the last answer of I'd say glad to meet you, which was booming. This is one of the factors which we are now looking to correct based on how we laid out the system.
Oh.
And the system was laid out, and I'm going to put this at a level that everybody could explain, but we took a train track, we put the engine up front, and then we put together each car that was attached and put the product on it, stacked it perfectly, made sure it was doing what it was supposed to do in the audio chain, and delivering the goods and the voices how we wanted them delivered.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing we forgot to check was the engine. So everything was loaded up. And what I mean by that is that our chain of audio is a linear system.
Okay.
Staticom is a non-linear system. So Cherie and I have been making changes, and the results have been overwhelming.
It will be much better than what
you're hearing today.
Oh, very cool. Wow. Well, I'm excited. As this evolves, as it continues to develop, again, you guys are really moving the goalposts, and this is exactly what this field needs, is innovators and people that are trying new processes and honing tried and true processes and improving them, and you're doing both. I think that Staticom is an evolution of sorts, but it's also very revolutionary and unique, and so it's both. And I'm really thrilled with what you're doing, and I'm extraordinarily excited to see where it can go and how far you can get with this. It's just so amazing.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Could you guys take a few minutes and let people know how to stay in touch with you guys and Staticom, and any future endeavors or engagements that you're doing where they could participate?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, there's currently two websites, entityvoices.com for the West Coast, and the East Coast has gagnacparanormal.com, and there's listings if there's events going on, where they're going to be, where Staticom's going to be shown. We have a Staticom Project YouTube channel, Facebook, the Staticom Project, Tony Rathman, Cherie Rathman, Ron Iacovetti, Lourdes Gonzalez. People can find information on any of these places on events and things going on and where it'll be shown. Those are the best channels to use. And
if they also want to see more of the evidence that we captured, it's also on that.
Yeah, it's on YouTube, Entity Voices, Staticom,
Tony Rathman.
Yeah, Facebook. or Facebook pages, Twitch, Twitter. It's all over. If you just Google Staticom, you'll come across pages of stuff.
Yeah, I did. I before the show, when I was grabbing links to put in the description, and there's a couple of those links are in the show description. But once again, thank you both for coming on the show, and thank you for not only taking the time and bringing samples and examples, but fielding questions from our audience. Because again, we've got this amazing audience of people who are just so fascinated and come with so many great ideas and thoughts. So thank you for taking time for us tonight.
Well, it was an honor to be here, and we thank you.
Yeah, thank you
And
so
your
much.
audience. Thanks for the
Thank you
questions.
so
Great
much.
questions.
All right. And again, we'll have to get you back, of course. But
Anytime.
anytime anything new comes up or you feel like you got more to say, by God, the door's open for you.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Brent.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap up our journey for tonight. Definitely follow Staticom and get involved with their pages and keep an eye on what they're doing because these guys are really moving the needle and it's incredibly exciting. And this is the last show before the holidays. I don't know if I'm going to come back and do shows on New Year's week or not, but I'm going to be plenty busy for the next week, but I may do some impromptu streams. So if you are not subscribed or following the show, if you have not clicked the notifications, that's going to be your best bet to know when I'm going to be doing what I'm doing. I don't even know what I'm doing most of the time, but if I do something, you can know about it that way. So just remember, everybody, we love you guys. Be good, be kind, be nice, take care of each other, help each other out, find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. I wish you all amazing, wonderful, warm, and loving holidays. However you celebrate with whomever you're celebrating, just be close and enjoy the time. We probably don't take enough time in our lives for these tender moments. So just embrace them. And I'll be back as soon as I can be. Watch social media for any announcements or paranormalportal.net. And until then, that's it for me. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Happy holidays. And you guys take care. And thank you again, both of you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Russ, thank you, Brent.
All right. Good night, everybody. I'm going to roll the credits.
Woo!